welcome to the first episode of ABC Bitesize with me, Danny Evans. The idea for this subseries of our podcast came from a tweet from Anarchopac about how frustrating it is that so many books on anarchist history are not available in English. As Spanish speakers, we thought it might be an idea to make short podcasts giving overviews with key quotes of untranslated history books in that language that we think might be of interest. If you think this is a good idea and can contribute from other source languages, then please get in touch with us, either by email, abcwithdannyandjim@gmail.com, Twitter @abcdannyandjim, or Facebook. This first edition is about Antifascistas alemanes in Barcelona, German anti-fascists in Barcelona 1933 to 1939, by Nelles, Harald Piotrowski, Ulrich Linse, and García. It was originally published by Sintra in 2010. In this podcast, I'll be referring to the second 2019 edition, published by Virus, a publishing house based in Barcelona that has released loads of works on anarchist history and theory, including several important books by Miquel Amorós, making many of its publications available for free download. The book focuses on the German anarchists and anti-Stalinist Marxists who formed the Deutsche Anarchosyndicalisten (DAS) group, and is split into several sections. The first two give an overview of the background to German migration to Spain. The third section, titled The Foreign Legion of the Revolution, is a much extended version of the essay by Nelles, which is available in English on Libcom. The remaining sections look at the relationship of Spanish anarchism to the international anarchist movement, the role of the DAS in the Spanish Civil War, and the repression that the group suffered as a consequence of the counter-revolution in the Republican zone. In what follows, I will attempt to summarize the story the book tells, highlighting some specific quotes that I found particularly interesting or moving. I hope you enjoy it. At the outset of the Spanish Civil War in 1936, there were approximately 3,000 Germans resident in Barcelona. Of these, over a third were signed up to the German Employment Association, an official body with close links both to the Nazi regime and to local fascists in Spain. The remainder were a mixed bag of emigrants driven from Germany by economic as well as political factors. Among the latter category were a handful of anarchists who founded the Deutsche Anarchosyndicalisten group, DAS group. During the Civil War, they were to play a role whose significance belied their scant number. Before then, between 1933 and 1936, the DAS group in Barcelona existed at the margins of Catalonia's massive anarchist movement. Escaping from Germany after Hitler's coming to power, the country's anarchists, much reduced in number since the First World War, regrouped in the straitened conditions of exile alongside thousands of similarly persecuted refugees in cities such as Paris, Amsterdam, and Stockholm. In Barcelona, the new arrivals faced the same official suspicion and racializing discourse with which poor migrants from southern Spain, seen as the natural constituents of anarchism, were treated. Particularly alarming for Spain's Republican authorities was the celebration of an Esperanto Congress in Valencia in August 1934, which several Jewish anarchists and communists took advantage of to obtain an entry visa. As García and Harald Piotrowski observe in the first section of the book, the fact that participants at the Congress called themselves Senakiuloi, Esperanto for without country, made them even more suspect as potential agents of internationalism. In spite of this grouping together of new German arrivals with the already established anarchist enemy within, the newly formed DAS could not rely on the unconditional solidarity and institutional support of the anarchist organizations in Spain, the National Confederation of Labour, CNT, and Iberian Anarchist Federation, FI. This was due in part to their arrival during the so-called Bienio Negro, the 2 black years, when anarchist activists in Spain were jailed in the tens of thousands and newspapers and workers' centres suppressed. The authors of the present work also point to other factors. the language barrier, for example, and, more interestingly, the limits of internationalist practice in the anarchist movement. On the one hand, the CNT was prey to chauvinist tendencies. Apart from honourable exceptions such as Valeriano Orobon Fernandez, the Confederation was in general reluctant to admit foreign influences into what was, after all, the last mass anarchist organisation left standing in a period of generalised reaction. On the other hand, the criticisms made of this tendency by Dutch and German anarchists at this time demonstrated, in the words of Dieter Nelles, a certain arrogance of Central European civilization, the rejection of which was a sine qua non of effective relations with the Spanish movement. Despite such inauspicious beginnings, the outbreak of the Civil War, in which Hitler's aid to the mutinous generals was the necessary condition for a failed coup d'etat being transformed into a full-scale conflict, utterly transformed the potential for effective activity. The DAS went into action in the opening weeks of street fighting and revolution, effectively disarticulating the network of Nazis in Barcelona by the end of the summer of 1936. Several would then enlist in anarchist militia columns alongside other foreigners present in Spain before the formation of the international brigades. On the basis of findings derived from the requisitioning of materials and expropriation of property in Barcelona, the DAS group published a report detailing Nazi activity in Spain entitled Nazismo al desnudo, Nazism in the nude. The effectiveness of the DAS group in this period, in spite of its small numbers, led to a new relationship with the activists of the CNT in Barcelona, and the group was given responsibility for overseeing customs, postal services, ports and train stations as a kind of special investigation force, officially at the orders of the newly established Committee of Investigation and Security, which was dominated by the CNT. One of the DAS group's members, Helmut Kirschy, would later remember that in the beginning we had too much power in our hands, and this went to some of our heads. The autonomous revolutionary initiative shown by the DAS group would soon prove incompatible with the uneasy alliance between revolutionaries and what remained of the Republican state in Spain. As is well known, the CNT had held back from deposing the Republican authorities during the revolutionary period opened up in the summer of 1936. Leading activists justified this decision on the basis of the need to reassure foreign governments that loyalist Spain did not threaten their interests and that they should therefore support the Republic against the mutinous army. It was in this spirit that Juan García Oliver, a leading Spanish anarcho-syndicalist and Minister of Justice in the Republican government, made a point of declaring at a rally in January 1937 that we saved the lives of the English, the French, the Italians, the Germans, not the lives of proletarians, but capitalists, of fascists, of those who conspired against us. There were no assaults on embassies or consulates. Enough time was given to the capitalist powers to organise the repatriation of their subjects. The activity of the DAS group represented a stumbling block in this sense. As García and Piotrowski observe, the vigorous work of the DAS necessarily conflicted with the shadowy manoeuvres that were going on in certain departments of the Catalan government, in contact with the consular representatives of Hitler's Germany in Barcelona, who, as the book shows, were constantly complaining of the expropriations and house searches that the group carried out on German nationals. Nor was the leadership of the CNT, increasingly embroiled in the affairs of state, prepared to give unconditional support to the DAS. Nelles shows how the CNT courted the rival exile organisation, the German Social Revolutionary Movement for Freedom, in spite of its even smaller size, and the contacts that one of its members maintained with the Strasserite dissident Nazi grouping, the Black Front. When the DAS detained another of its members who had written a letter describing the international group of the Durruti column as idiots and cowards, he was released on the say-so of the CNT hierarchy. As governmental authority began to reassert itself, the German anarchists were prevented from taking their purge to its logical consequences, and Nazi officials were able, in the main, to depart Barcelona unscathed, albeit that their luggage was inspected by the DAS before boarding. Safely back in Germany, they reported to their superiors that their libertarian compatriots who persecuted them in the city had been Bolshevik Jews. Ironically, it was the supposed inheritors of the Bolshevik tradition, the Spanish and Catalan communist parties, who would prove the principal beneficiaries of the sidelining of the revolution and the persecution that this brought with it for the partisans of revolutionary methods during the Civil War. The DAS participated in the anarchist uprising of May 1937 in Barcelona, which sought to reverse the counter-revolution and reconnect the Civil War to the revolutionary process. The book plays down the role of the DAS in these events, but personally I am not sure about this, as the group participated in the meeting of the Barcelona FAI in April that formed an important precursor to the rising, and also took part in the Neighbourhood Liaison Committee coordinating activity in the neighbourhood of García during the street fighting. Of course, it's possible that some members were more active than others, or participated in an individual capacity. In any case, the members of the DAS were subject to repression after May 1937, alongside scores of other foreign anarchists and dissident communists, as well as thousands of grassroots activists of the CNT and the dissident Marxist party, the POUM. The Centre for Anti-Fascist Émigrés the DAS had set up was taken over and its members arrested when they approached the building. After arrest, they were subject to lengthy interrogations by German and Russian Stalinists about their activity both in Spain and more particularly in the German underground. When the DAS group's founder, Helmut Rudiger, left Spain in September 1937, he was the last man standing, writing that everyone has gone. They have either been expelled from the country or are liable to be deported from the prisons of Valencia and Barcelona. During this period of repression, the group received little solidarity from the CNT leadership, which effectively washed its hands of their German comrades. This caused particular bitterness, not only because of the danger it placed the German anarchists in, but because the underground anarchist group back in Germany had been dismantled while carrying out activity in solidarity with the Spanish Revolution. Fritz Benner, a DAS member who had come to Barcelona after experiencing jail and concentration camps in Germany and had fought at the front, wrote, "I maintain that the CNT has not given a penny to the underground German organization or to the imprisoned comrades in Germany. By contrast, in Germany hundreds of comrades have been arrested, some beaten to death, because they were collecting money for the Spanish comrades. The time has come to shout it to the four winds that the small DAS group, which has been disrespected and maligned, has carried out in conditions of awful terror such internationalist and international solidarity work that almost all of the active comrades have been arrested." The activity and fate of German anarchists in Spain is an interesting and moving story in its own right, but it should not be ignored by anyone interested in the processes of revolution and state reconstruction in wartime Spain, the vicissitudes of working-class internationalism, or the degeneration of the CNT during the Civil War. The book is 650 pages long, so inevitably I've only been able to give a flavour of the huge quantity of information and research that it contains. Hopefully it will be translated into English one day, but in the meantime I hope that this has been a useful introduction to its key themes and findings.